Okay, so like, Brock's dad completely abandons his 10 fucking kids to go be a Pokemon trainer. Then, depending on whether you're watching in English or Japanese, Brock's mom either dies or runs out on the family herself. Then, as soon as Brock's dad shows any interest whatsoever in returning to the picture, Brock immediately fucks off and abandons them as well to pursue his own dream of becoming a Pokemon breeder, seemingly without even saying goodbye. That is kinda fucked. But it also makes perfect sense. And the darkest part is that everyone in this episode is totally wrong about everything, and none of that wrongness is rectified at all. So Ash rushes into battle against Brock unprepared, which is hardly surprising because throughout the early part of the series, Ash is an absolute garbage Pokemon trainer. The only thing he's really got going for him is endless determination and such a kind heart that when his Pikachu runs away from what it instantly recognizes as a fight it can't win, he tells it to get its ass back out there and win, goddammit! This leads to what for me as a kid was one of the scariest moments in the early episodes. Ash trying to recall his suffering Pikachu and being totally helpless at Brock's mercy. Having bind used against you in the game is mostly just frustrating, since the imagery is pretty abstract and you aren't likely to form much of a meaningful bond with your Pokemon the way you understand Ash's bond with his. But seeing it in the anime used on the Pikachu you've just spent 4 episodes learning to love is pretty shocking. Brock torments Ash's Pikachu in order to teach Ash a lesson about the pain of having to watch your Pokemon suffer for your own pride. Following this, Ash's ego is shattered for about 6 hours, and then he hooks Pikachu up to a fucking water wheel and tells it to put up with the pain because he's also working hard. This is a metaphorical get-rich-quick scheme, and exactly the kind of thing a scammer like Brock's dad would rely on for growth. While Ash admires that he supposedly knows so much about Pokemon, the reality is that ideas like this are probably exactly how he failed in his Pokemon journey. And later on he even tells Ash that he's the spitting image of himself at that age, totally hopeless. So clearly he hasn't learned his lesson at all until possibly this moment. Ash performs terribly all throughout the return match before lucking out and tripping the sprinkler system, paralyzing Onyx. Brock considers this to be within fair parameters of the match, but Ash doesn't, considering that the victory wouldn't have any basis in his own tactics or training, but simply the luck of an unpredictable environment. Yet Brock then passes the badge along to him anyways, claiming that Ash not only won the match, but won in terms of being kind to Pokemon. Even as a kid, this always rung hollow to me. Ash didn't do shit out of kindness to Pokemon. Sure, his ego was bruised again by realizing he could only win through luck, but he didn't forfeit the match out of kindness towards Brock's Onyx. At best, he could be said to have done it out of sympathy for Brock's brothers and sisters. Brock is just doing the exact same thing which Ash and his own father have done throughout the episode, by projecting his ego onto someone else. Ash made Pikachu run into battle and take the electroshock therapy because he wanted Pikachu to get stronger in the name of his own personal goals. Brock's dad helped Ash because he wanted to see a version of his own younger self succeed. Brock gives Ash the pewter badge because he wants to be able to vicariously help someone else to live the adventure of their dreams because he isn't capable of ditching his responsibilities to do the same. In the end, Ash and Brock are both absolved of their wrongdoings. Ash is just about ready to take this one on the chin and learn from it, but then Brock reassures him that he's already better than him as a person. Brock then passes the buck back onto his father as soon as possible to go fuck off and do the very same thing he did. Does he honestly think that giving the kids back over to this guy who knows dick all about them at this point, has been known to run off on them already, and has proven within this episode that he's still kind of a scumbag, is a responsible decision? If so, it's probably because he's not really thinking about it. He's too excited at getting the opportunity to go live his dreams to consider the consequences. Now supposing, since this is a kid's show that we're not meant to think too hard about, that Brock's dad reintegrated himself into the family just fine and the kids weren't totally heartbroken to lose their big brother, we could at least assume that the father did in fact learn his lesson from the results of that battle and decided to resign himself to taking responsibility as an adult and letting the kids go off to learn some better life lessons than what he could teach them on their own. But the funny thing about Pokemon as a series is that if you were watching it back when it first aired on WB in the late 90s like I was, and you fell off the wagon eventually thanks to shifting time slots, conflict with your bus arrival times as you changed grades in schools, reruns, network changes, etc., then you probably never really got to see Ash actually complete the arc of learning to be a more competent Pokemon trainer. After all, the series is very long, and the characters make very slow progress. this, so it was hard to even really sense the idea that there was supposed to be overarching development for the characters at all. If you never got to see Ash truly taken to task over his failures by anyone other than Misty, whom herself throughout this episode does not encourage Ash to take the proper route of patiently training his Pokemon until they're strong enough to fight, but instead wants him to just borrow one of hers which she knows can win, probably out of an ego-driven desire to prove the strength of her own Pokemon, then the message of the episode seems to be that even if everyone's a total fuck-up, things might work out anyways through sheer force of chaotic luck. And that's why Pokemon is the wokest kids show of all time. Please forgive my stupid-ass clickbait title and support me on Patreon so I can keep overthinking children's cartoons. Thanks again for watching, I'll see you tomorrow.